Hello! In this tutorial, we're going to discuss the addition of lighting or artificial lighting in this space. We've already touched upon natural lighting in previous tutorials, and now we're going to talk about the artificial lighting in the interior space so we can finally add the ceiling and have a more enclosed experience within the space. To do that, I'm going to go to my standards tab right here and move my scroll over to this cone shape that is right next to the render icon that says create spotlight. Now if I press on it, it will automatically create a spotlight for me. However, if I press on this little arrow right here towards the lower right corner of this icon, you will see that a list of different lights comes up whenever I want to choose the kind of lighting. Now, to give you a quick overview of the different kinds of lighting, and this will be explored in other courses as interior design students, spotlights are lights that offer a very small spot or a very particular spot of lighting. So it's usually used to emphasize a detail or to emphasize an aesthetical appeal of a certain space, and this is why we use spotlights for, and that's why it's called a spotlight, because it puts the attention on a certain spot in the space, and it highlights certain details and aesthetical appeals of objects. However, the light is usually more intense, even though it is directed towards a certain or a specific space. Moving forward to the point light, which this light depends on the source of the light. So if we have a certain source that looks more of a point in the space, then this is the kind of light that we will use. Then we have the directional lighting, which is the light that is placed in one direction. It is not necessarily a small space or to a certain object, but it is in one direction. The next is a square lighting, so that usually can be used whenever we want to give general lighting to space, and by general lighting we mean ambient light or an overall light in the space that we use to be able to walk around, to see the entire space and not to direct the attention to a specific spot. We can also go for linear lights. So whenever we have linear lights, for instance, around a certain ceiling or a corner, this is when we choose linear light. And of course, we have different kinds of lighting in other options. Please go ahead and explore all the different kinds of lighting, look at the effects, and try to combine different sources. It is almost never that we have only one source of light or one type of light in a space. Even in reality, we need to be considering the different kinds of spaces so that we can give the proper emphasis, and so that the room can function as the designer has intended it to. We're going to go ahead and give an example of how we create spotlights. For instance, I'm just going to double click right here, and I'm going to move this from ray traced to rendered, just for a quicker render or a quicker working process. And I'm going to go ahead to my top view, zoom out a little bit, and centralize my drawings. So the majority of my details are right here, even though I don't have many details here. I'm just going to add a spotlight here. So I'm going to choose spotlight from my list, and you can see that it says choose the base of the cone in the command line. So what we get obviously from the picture and from the command line is that the spotlight looks like a cone. So if the cone looks like this, like what we see in the icon right here, you can see that the light comes out from this side or the larger side of the cone, while the base is where the light source itself is placed. So the base is this point. So I say I need the light to be placed here. So I want the base to be here, and the radius can be, say, this big. So the radius is how big the area that is being lit is. So I wanted to light this area, for instance. And now it says decide where the base point is. So where do you want the base of the coin to be? So say right now, given my view, and given that I have made certain decisions before, all I'm going to do is just give it the direction, and I can edit that later. So right now, this is how my cone is going to look like. So you can see that the light source is right here, and the light is going to come out in this direction. However, we have a lot of problems with this position. First of all, the light source is located outside the space, and that shouldn't happen. So the first thing that I need to do is select my object, move it so that it is inside the space. So you can see now, if you look at the interior view perspective, or the interior view viewport, you can see that when I move the light source inside, the effect starts taking place. The next problem is that if you look at the right and the front sides, you will see that the light is placed on the floor and is heading straight. So it's going in a straight line, in a direct straight line or a linear form, and that is what we usually never have in spaces. The light source is usually either placed on the floor pointing up, or on the ceiling pointing downwards, or somewhere at the upper part of the room in general, either on the walls or in the ceiling, and it points downwards towards a specific object. Now, to be able to edit that, I'm gonna have to first move the base of my cone upwards. So I'm gonna move it again and place it up from this view right here. Again, the location of the light source is resolved. However, the angle is yet to be resolved. Now, to do that, I'm gonna have to turn the control points on from my view. So I'm gonna edit the control points. Oh, sorry, I clicked on off. Show object control points, and you can see that the control points are now clearer. So I'm gonna go ahead and pick this control point and start moving it in the direction that I want my light to be pointed at. So I can start moving it so that it points, say, here. However, you can see that my light is too sharp. So if we replace the ceiling again, and I show you the ray traced image, you will see that it's really uncomfortable and unrealistic. So you can see that the spotlight is an actual spotlight that you would see in different exhibitions, for instance, in exhibition spaces, or in as an actual spotlight, and it doesn't feel like more of an ambient light. If I wanted an ambient light, I can either edit this spotlight and support it with other light sources, or I can go ahead and try other kinds of light to start with. Now, if I choose to edit this light source, there are multiple things that I can edit. I can either edit, remember I have my control points on, and I can start picking the control points. So I realize that the area that I choose is a bit too small, so I can either make it bigger or smaller by moving this point right here. So I'm gonna pick this up and start enlarging it and moving it so that the area is slightly bigger. Now you can see that I have two circles. One is the outer ring of the light, and the other one is where the more directional light is. And because we want it to be more of an ambient light, I also need to increase this and move this point so that this circle is slightly bigger to give it more of an ambient feel right here. So you can see that the covered area is a bit bigger. However, the light seems to have a lot of contrast. So I need to edit this so that I avoid these dark areas or dark corners over there, and avoid these burnt areas right in front of the light. So to do that, I'm gonna pick my light, I'm gonna choose my light, and then go ahead, I'm gonna double escape, select my light in general to turn, of course I double escape to turn my control points off, and I'm gonna go ahead to the control of the light, and you will see that since my light is selected, this icon is automatically highlighted. So I'm editing the properties of the light itself. Now what I can edit is the color of the light. I can also go for maybe more yellowish light if I wanted to, and you can see how this is affecting the feel in the space and the mood. This is a purely white space, which is closer to probably natural light, and I can make it even more towards natural lighting, and I can make it more towards maybe yellow light, maybe red light. So go ahead and start experimenting. Remember that you can also combine different light sources with different colors, different intensities, and different properties in general. So I'm gonna go ahead and choose maybe this tone, just so we can avoid accepting the original or the default values. Maybe a little bit more towards white. I'm gonna click on OK. And then I can edit the intensity. Now the intensity of the light is how intense the light is, or how strong or how burnt the objects are when it comes to the light. So how strong or how much light or illuminance this light is offering me. As we said, the effect of that, if I have such a high intensity in the light, I am more prone towards getting more burnt places. If I reduce the intensity of the light too much, I risk having too much of a dark space. So I always need to start experimenting and finding the appropriate intensity. Now this depends on the day of time, the time of the day, the location, the season, the amount of natural lighting that enters the space, the amount of different light sources around this particular light source. So as a result, there is no right and wrong. There are no specific values that I can give you to give you the best effect. The best advice I can say right now is experiment. Whenever you have all of your lights on, keep on experimenting until you get the effect that you find more realistic or more closer, let's say, closer to reality. Now I'm gonna move the intensity. I can either move or edit from the lever right here, or I can edit it by inputting different values right here, or of course using these arrows right here. Now next is the shadow intensity. Now the shadow intensity, you can see how intense these shadows are right here at the corners, and when I edit this and make it slightly smaller, you will see that the shadows become a bit less intense and less defined, so to speak. So you can see that it becomes a little bit more blurry. So the casting objects, so this will also be more apparent if I have objects that cast their shadows in the space, so you can edit that. Let me just put a rectangle right here, or a cube, just so you can see the effects of this object. So we have here, and you can look at the shadow at the back, and you can see as I change the shadow intensity, this also takes effect on the shadow of the object that I have just placed. So how sharp the shadows are is what affects this value, or what this value affects. Now the spotlight hardness also affects the shadow intensities and the definition of the shadows more than the shadow intensity. So the shadow intensity is how dark the shadows are. The spotlight hardness is how defined these shadows are. So you can see if I reduce the spotlight hardness, these shadows become more blurry, they become less edgy. However, I need to keep on playing around to come up with the best combination of values for this specific scene that I'm trying to introduce. Again, there is no right and wrong. There are no specific values that I can give you to help you come up with a better object or with a better effect. You need to keep on playing around with the properties of the specific light source. You also need to play around with the combination of light sources that you will be producing. Remember, one light source is almost never enough. You need to support natural lighting with multiple artificial light sources and vice versa. I hope this helps, and if you have any questions, please let me know.